So I want to thank Laura Powers for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm glad to talk with you today. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
So, I am most known as a psychic. So, I grew up with abilities, thought I was crazy. It's kind of a wild story. Tried to block it out and then eventually circled back to it, acknowledged it, got some confirmation from a family friend who had seen a ghost that I'd seen but never told any about, that I wasn't crazy. So, that was, a big changing moment for me. And had previously had a career in politics and government. So I did this kind of 180, started working on my psychic abilities, and also went back to my more creative side. So I majored in theater in college, and then after college, I kind of went into government, politics, higher education. And then during the recession, that whole industry kind of crashed. And at the same time, I had my sort of psychic and spiritual awakening. And I started taking psychic classes. And then I also, at that time, went back to acting and I started making my living as an actress while I was building my psychic business, which is kind of funny because, like, that's backwards compared. A lot of people are like trying to make it as an actress. And then, but then once I started working as an actress, I made a living, but, not a very big one in terms of income. And I developed my psychic work. And as that started to take off, I was like, wow, I make a lot more money as a psychic. So I kind of switched my focus. And I still do, act and creative work. I'm working on an album right now, a new EP as a singer and songwriter. And the sort of bulk of my business and focus is as a psychic, but it all very much pieces together. And as an example, I did improv for years and recently had the opportunity to be on Will Ferrell's podcast, the Ron Burgundy podcast. And my skills as an actress and doing improv totally came in because that was an interview for me as a psychic, but it was unscripted. And I was definitely kind of improving it because I was having to pretend like Ron Burgundy's a real person asking me these questions, which were ridiculous.
I bet that was incredible though.
Oh yeah, it was really, really fun. So it's always amazing how all these different, areas of your life can come together for different opportunities.
Yeah. So tell me, when did you first like kind of start having this feeling that you were a psychic?
Well, ever since I was little, I just knew I was different, but I thought that I was maybe crazy because other people clearly didn't see and sense the things that I did. So I'm a medium. I also have done paranormal communication. So I basically see and sense things that others don't see, ghosts, spirits, entities, angels. And so I thought I was crazy. And then I had this, confirmation when this family friend saw this ghost. And that was a life-changing moment for me because I went from me thinking, okay, maybe I'm crazy and I better not talk about this too. I'm not crazy. I'm pretty freaked out. And that's when I went through my process of really not knowing what to do. Didn't have teachers in my life at the point. The internet was around, but it was a totally different landscape then as it is now. Now you can find teachers and information, and it's so much easier. So I did the only thing that I knew how to do at that time, which was to block it all out because I just didn't really know how to handle it. And that's what led to, many years later, me having to kind of come to terms with it, seek out classes. Because when you block, if you have abilities like this and you block them out, it's not a good thing. Like you end up kind of energetically blocking your body and your intuition as well. So it was really important that I opened back up. And for me, my psychic abilities are very tied in with my creativity. So a lot of my creative work is channeled, so whether that's writing or songwriting. And I know that now, but when I was younger, I didn't really have that connection. So when I was blocking that out, I was basically blocking out my creativity in pretty major ways as well.
Wow. Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things like if you block it out so long, you probably start to lose those feelings, huh? Or is it just kind of,
Well, I would say I was disconnected from it. And as soon as I set the intention to open it back up, I was able to tap right back into it pretty easily. But, it did cause me problems in the sense of not being able to kind of navigate in a better way. I mean, that part of my sort of life crisis in the recession was involved with me just not literally seeing things properly, meaning I was really caught up in material illusion. I was in a bad marriage. I didn't really see the marriage as it was. I just kind of like I got hit in the face by a 2x4 that I didn't see coming, because I just wasn't looking for the intuitive signs. I just, and in retrospect, it was like, well, I totally should have seen that coming, all that stuff, but I just didn't. And so I really encourage everyone to learn about their intuition and how it operates for them, because it basically is just a way for you to navigate through life with more ease and flow and a lot less pain.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. So you said you started out in politics. So you ended up going, did you do actress, like you were actress first, or did you model first, or what came about with that?
So I did modeling ever since I was a little kid. So I, knew photographers through the family, and did some runway shows and things like that as a child, and with photos. So I was doing that ever since I was little. I also started acting when I was very young, and singing. Funny things that popped in, like when I was in elementary school, our school was creating a song for our elementary school, like a school song, and I helped to write it. I was chosen to help write it because we all in music class were kind of working on it, and I was chosen as one of them. And then so I helped write the school song, and then we were recorded in the music studio and we were featured on the news. And so ever since I was little, all these things have happened, all the creative stuff. So whether it's
Yeah.
modeling, singing, acting, and then as I got older, I did focus more on first acting. So I majored in theater in college. But then when I graduated, I went into more government and politics. And that was at the same time that I was shutting out my psychic abilities. So I feel like that's very connected. As soon as I had my psychic awakening and opening, I was like, I can't be in this sort of government politics world anymore. I completely just shifted my focus. And I was really involved in that world. Like I was a state delegate in the state assembly and convention in '08. I was a planning commissioner. I was a chair of the public art committee in my town. Like I was very involved in politics. And then it was like once I sort of realized my abilities and that I needed to face them, it's like a switch flipped, and I went from being into politics to being completely out of politics. And people that knew me were like, "Who are you?" Like it's basically like I became a completely different person from their perspective.
Interesting. So you feel like you're more who you are meant to be now, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's pretty common for people, whether you're in the psychic realm or not, of, you kind of go down this path of doing the things that you think you're supposed to do. That's what I did was, okay, good job, check, husband, check, advanced degree, check, all the things, education, uh, house, all the things. And then I just had this kind of disillusionment that happened and realized that the life that I had built was not the one that I even wanted. And I had to go back to more who I really was. And ever since I was little, I remember a family friend asking me when I was, maybe 8, what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to be an actress and a model and a singer. And psychic wasn't really in my worldview at that point. So I would have even known to say that. But all those things are things that I do now.
That's incredible. So I see you've written a couple of books. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have 7 books that are currently released. Those are all on the psychic spiritual realm. And I'm actually about to release my 8th book, which is on podcasting. So podcasting is a huge thing in my life. I host 6 podcasts. It's a huge part of my business and my platform. So love that. I'm excited for that book. And yeah, writing was one of those things that I always loved to do. And I would say I think it comes pretty easily for me. I'd be one of those people in college or high school where I'd have a paper due and I'd write at 10 p.m. the night before and get an A, just like bam, really, really fast. And so it's always been something that I've been pretty good at, and I love. And one of the things I love about writing is it's such a great way to share and teach information. So there's no way I could connect with other people that I'd like to connect with for my work. So it's just a really awesome way to be able to share the information that I have, especially in the psychic spiritual realm. And I feel like this is very needed right now with people, and not me have to do it like one-on-one individually with everyone.
Exactly. And I'm sure podcasting and Zoom and all of that make it so much easier for your business right now.
Oh my gosh, totally. I've been using Zoom for years, and all of a sudden it was like everyone knows about Zoom now. But yeah, it's a great platform.
I was in the age of Skype. So for me, Zoom, I mean, I knew obviously it was pretty much the same thing, but it was hard for me to transfer from Skype to Zoom.
I use Skype too. And I've always traveled a lot. So especially as a traveler, Skype was good, but definitely Zoom is a lot more reliable and less glitchy for podcast recording in my experience than Skype.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear about the podcast. So tell me a little bit about the type that you run.
Sure. So my most well-known podcast is called Healing Powers Podcast, and that was my first podcast. I started that podcast 9 years ago, and this was before most people knew what a podcast was. Like, it was pretty common that I would tell people I was a podcaster, and they'd say, "What's a podcast?" And then I have to explain it. At least now most people have like heard of a podcast, even if they don't listen. So I started my first podcast. Are you okay?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm trying to mute the mic.
Oh, no worries.
Maybe.
So I started my first podcast really to share information that helped me on my sort of psychic, spiritual, as well as physical healing journey. Because, I went through this big health crisis at the same time that I was psychically opening back up, where I was physically sick. I was on sleeping pills. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now. Everything was just a mess. And then I found some healing resources that helped me, and I wanted to share that. So that was the driving force behind my first podcast, Healing Powers Podcast. And then as I started working as a psychic and building my business in that way, I started to share information about that through the platform as well. And so it just kind of grew, and I loved it. And as I developed my psychic work, and then I developed that as a base, I started to focus more on some of my other creative projects. And then I basically started podcasts on that. So, podcasts on writing. So my second podcast was for writers, and then one on film and television. And, then I have one on music and, kind of business, design. So yeah, it's been a really awesome way to learn, to share. And I love podcasting for the opportunity to connect with people. I think there's nothing like it in that sense.
That's incredible. So that definitely has helped your business then in all aspects of the things you like to do.
Oh yeah. I'm not exaggerating when I say that 90 to 95% of my clients come from podcasting.
That's incredible. Okay. So is there any other
Yeah.
forms of social media that you use to help with that as well?
I mean, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm not that active on Twitter. And Instagram is more recent for me. Facebook, I've been active on for a while. So I would say Facebook is very much like a generator for me in terms of business as well. And Instagram, I think, is growing in that way. And I do have someone that helps me with graphics for my podcast and my business, and freelancer, as well as an assistant that helps me with social media posts as well. So yeah, it's definitely a significant part. And it's funny, I know I have a lot of friends that aren't on Facebook anymore, and I'm like, I kind of need to be on Facebook. Like, I understand why people get off the platform, but for me, it's pretty instrumental.
See, that's kind of the way I am. Is I grew my business starting with Facebook with all my friends
Yeah.
in my area. I'm a photographer in my town, so that's
Oh,
how most people know me, is for my photography. But I've
yeah.
built something, and I don't think that I would have gotten as well known as I had without Facebook.
Yeah.
Such a
Oh,
small community.
definitely.
It's great.
Yeah, it's a really nice way to kind of organically share things, and especially when you're just starting out with your circle, and that's how I did too, just kind of posting with people that I knew. And same with my email newsletter. For the people in my newsletter in the beginning were my close friends and my mom, and then now I have a list of about a couple of thousand, so it's definitely
That's
changed over time.
incredible.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
See, I've wanted to do the newsletter thing, but how do you feel about that? Like, do you think that that's really increased as well for you?
Oh yeah, I really recommend it. And one of the things the newsletter does for me is it helps me have a schedule with updating my content. So I do a monthly newsletter. I've thought of increasing it, and I may, but even just having a once a month where I send out information, what it gets me to do is be like, oh, I need to update the content so I have something to mention in my newsletter. So that's been really helpful for me just for that reason alone. But yeah, I think it's really great. And it just keeps keeps you in people's minds moving forward. And it's pretty common for me to have someone that's been on my email list for years, and then suddenly they'll book a session or do a class, or or buy a course or something. So, and also just a nice way to keep in touch. I think it's a really good thing to do. And in terms of effort, it's not a lot of effort. You can have a set thing where you have different segments of your newsletter, and then just kind of like, oh, this segment is for my blog, and this is kind of my schedule, and here's something that I'm offering, a special or whatever. So if once you create a structure like that, you can just kind of plug things in, and it doesn't have to be like an enormous task.
Right. That's incredible, though. I want to eventually implement the newsletter thing, but I just haven't, because I'm scared that nobody's going to bite, and I'm just going to kind of have like 3 people that, see it. So,
Well, Yeah, that's why I mentioned the whole thing, when it started out, there were like 8 people that were just on my circle, that were on my list. And then it just grew. And, it's been years. And honestly, it's something that I haven't even worked at that much. Like I literally just have a capture thing on my website. If you want news, sign up. And that's really pretty much all it is. Or if I go to an event and I say, if you want to hear from me, and you can give me your email. That's really all that I do. But yeah, I recommend it, and just know that you'll start small, and certainly on your podcast you could mention it. Hey, if you want to hear from me, additional details on the podcast, whatever, and then it just gives people an additional way to connect with you.
That's awesome. So how are you doing with your business right now with all of this going on? I know we just talked about a little bit about that, but kind of go into more detail for me.
Yeah, it's been really interesting because I normally travel a lot, and that's simply because I like to travel. I mean, it is a business generator for me to travel, but basically I love the sort of jet setting lifestyle. I have, friends all over the world, and so I would typically be in 4 to 8 cities in a month. So
Wow.
quite a hectic travel schedule. And I didn't, start out that way. I've definitely built it up over the years. And so what I would typically do was go, maybe speak or cover a conference or festival, do media appearances for myself, maybe teach a class or a workshop, see some private clients. So everywhere I was going was like a combination of different things. And that was, an income generator every place I went to. I might connect with people that I obviously wouldn't connect with if I wasn't physically in that location, get introduced to new people for new venues where I was teaching. And so that's been great. I kind of like give the analogy of like a musician on tour. You're kind of like building your interest and connecting with people. And that's always helped my business wherever I am. I would continue to see phone or, Zoom clients wherever I was as well. And the cool thing is, because I've been doing that for years, I think now that I pulled back during the pandemic and not been able to travel, I still have been able to run my business very well. So the way that the money comes in, like it's not from an in-person event or private client in wherever location, it's just changed to doing more online courses, more phone sessions. So I feel very lucky that I've been able to transition very well during the pandemic. But I have been online for years and years, and I think that's significant. And if you are not online with your business, I highly recommend getting online as soon as possible. And it's funny because as a psychic, I don't always know exactly why things are happening. I'll get a message, and the guides don't always tell me the why, they just tell me the message. So for literally years, I've been telling all my clients, get online. You need to have an online business. Get online, do a podcast, do the things online. And then this pandemic happened, and it was like, well, that's part of why. Like, if you didn't have some kind of online thing, unless you're like a grocery store, and even then you should still have it, you're going to be hurting during this time. And I really feel like even though the pandemic is going to lessen, and this will become less significant part of our lives moving forward, some of these changes are here to stay in our society in terms of, there's going to continue to be a lot of online things, more business online. You're going to have a good website, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think it definitely has pushed so many people to have to innovate and think outside of the box and change their business. And I think it's a good thing
Totally.
to a degree. I mean, a lot of it sucks because a lot of people have been hit so hard, but it kind of makes them think, maybe I wasn't doing enough, or maybe there's more I can do. And that's an amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. There's a lot of silver linings to this situation, and pushing people out of their comfort zone, realigning people with work. If you were in something that wasn't aligned with you as a person, it's like that's all that stuff's being taken away. And this happened for me during the recession. I feel like a lot of what's happening for people now happened for me during the recession. And so because that was such an intense shift for me, where all my work was taken away because the sectors were just not doing well during the recession. And that's when I started my podcast, started, doing my work that I do now. So this time I feel like it wasn't as hard for me, but a lot of people, this time is the hard part. And then, moving forward, it's going to be a lot easier. And I just want to share, it's often darkest, or it's always darkest before the light. So if you're having a really hard time, I just feel like that just means it's going to be really awesome later. So just hang in there, because that was certainly the case for me during the recession. It was so hard. It was like a, bulldozer came through and kind of destroyed the life that I have, but it was so that I could build this awesome new life that's way better than the life I was living anyway.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think a lot of people too have either forgotten the recession or they were too young to remember the recession. So for them, the people who have already been through that, this is kind of like almost like a do-over, maybe a little bit harder.
Yep,
I was younger,
totally.
but I do remember how hard it took on my family. So I remember that because I remember during Katrina even, I mean, because I'm
Oh
in the
yeah.
South, so that hit really
Yeah.
heavily. And that's something I definitely remember. So now it's like, not being able to go anywhere, do anything. I mean, granted, that was a week. This has been, several weeks, months. But I remember that. And it's kind of like, I've been through it once. This is just that heightened a little bit.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And the implications of this are long term, some of the changes that have happened due to COVID-19, I think are going to be very long term in terms of how we handle society. And a lot of these big tech companies, they are never going to go back to having all these people work on site because
Yeah.
they've just realized they don't have to. The expenses are lower. I mean, it's just huge changes in terms of our society.
Which I really think, regardless of this, I think we saw that the world was going to eventually change that anyway. I think this just
Yeah.
pushed it forward, and this just made it happen a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I was just like on fast forward, like, okay, now we're here. Yeah, I was always, I think, gonna end that way, but yeah, it just happened a lot faster than I think people realized, and maybe not as smoothly as a lot of people realize. I mean, a lot of people realize, like, for example, a good friend of mine, when the office got shut down where he worked, and he just thought, okay, I'm just, he just kind of left his stuff on the desk where he's like, I never realized I was never going back to the office, which is what ended up happening. Like, he's never going to work back at the office. He's just working from home, like, indefinitely.
I mean, I'm sure he's not complaining though. That would be a really nice job to be able to stay home but still work.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's so many benefits. I think we have to look at this from the kind of micro macro perspective that a lot of these things that we've been doing that are really bad for the planet, they're also not good for us. Like, yeah, to sit in your car and commute, for a couple hours a day and, generating pollution and everything when you could just be from home or wherever you are, I think is, it's a significant thing. And you've seen that with all these pollution levels dropping all over the world.
Right. I think it's awesome. And I definitely think it gives people more time to with their kids and that kind of thing. I mean, there's just so much benefit with all of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me, is there anything in the future that you have that you're working on or that you can tell me?
Yeah, well, definitely my podcast book is a big one. And I'm so glad you host a podcast. I think they're awesome. I think a lot of people don't really realize, in terms of business, that a podcast can be such an amazing platform builder and income generator. So without my podcast, I would make so much less money just because it's a way for me to connect and share with the world, and then people hear about me and then they reach out. So my own podcast, and then I'm on a lot of different podcasts doing interviews just like this one all the time. It's, not uncommon for me to have a couple of interviews a day. So I don't do any paid marketing. And the cool thing about podcasting is that it's it doesn't seem like marketing. Like, it's content marketing, but it's just content. It's just people connecting with you and listening to you, and those that want to connect on a deeper level can reach out and do so. So I really love that because it's just easy and kind of natural and organic, and it's not like, here's a sales ad. It's so I love that. So I'm excited for this book. This is a book that I've been working on for several years and just been really busy. And that is one of the good aspects of the pandemic, is that it's given me a bit more time with less traveling, et cetera, to just really focus on it and finally get it out into the world. So I'm excited for that. And then we'll also be doing a course that is connected with the book. So I'll be doing a pre-order campaign very shortly, actually, for the book. And if people want to start or launch or just even grow a podcast, you can participate in this course with a cohort, and there'll be group coaching calls and a Facebook group, and then the online portion of the course. And so basically in 12 weeks, you'll be able to go from, not knowing anything about podcasting to having launched your podcast with a team or cohort that'll help you with, writing reviews and helping you get the word out about your new show. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I encourage everyone to do that. And then in terms of, coming up, I'm finally starting to do a little bit more travel. I normally travel a lot internationally, so I don't think that's going to be going for a little bit longer, but I'm definitely starting to do some domestic traveling and going to different locations as we move forward into the fall.
So are you doing public speaking right now, or you plan on doing a little bit more of that in the future?
Definitely doing public speaking, but it's changed to mostly like online events, so still doing it, but it's like it's a podcasting event, and instead of a conference in person, it's like now it's an online summit or something, or an online conference. So yeah, we'll definitely continue to do that. I typically speak at all the big podcasting conferences, and I also speak about writing, how to get published, how to get out there. Also, of course, on the psychic and spiritual realm. So yeah, we'll continue to do that as it's possible in person, and then absolutely online.
So can you give me the name of the book by any chance?
Sure. It's called Rock Your Podcast. And so it's about how to launch, grow, and monetize your podcast.
Perfect. And can you give me your social media handle so that way people know how to find you so they can get this book?
Sure. Yeah. So my website for my psychic work is healingpowers.net. And I also have a site that's for like podcasting, writing, coaching, and that's powershour.biz. And then I'm on Facebook. I have 2 pages, Laura Powers page, and then a Healing Powers page. And then I'm on Instagram at Laura Powers 44, and on Twitter at that Laura Powers.
Perfect. Thank you. And do you have any final words that you would like to say to anybody who's going through a rough time right now?
Yeah, it's going to get better. Like I said, that pattern of it always is dark right before the light. So just hang in there. In fact, I know this from my own experience, that if I'm having a particular bad time, I literally say to myself, something awesome is coming, because I just have witnessed that pattern over and over again in my life. So hang in there. Focus on your dreams and visions. Like, what is the life you ideally want to create? I think like what happened for me in the recession is what's happening for a lot of people right now. They were living a life that was all right, and so they just kind of went with the flow and just did it. And then now that's been taken away, but you can now have the opportunity to build something that's so much better than what you had before. And then also, I just like to say that we are all way more powerful than we are led to believe. I think in our society that you have so much power to build and create the life that you want, to have an amazing life, to build your dreams, to help other people. And don't be limited by what's happening right now. Just because things feel tough doesn't mean they will continue to be so. And you can create an amazing life. And this happened for me during the recession. I mean, I went from being unemployed, physically sick, and a bad marriage, just feeling pretty bleak about everything, to an amazing life with like incredible clients, working with celebrities, traveling all the time, like, a great business. Yeah. So, I mean, just to give people a sense of my business, I went from just me being a one person doing everything. Like I, did everything for my podcast and everything for my business. And I have a team of 8 people that support me with my work. And I love it. Like I've built this team and this business and a life that I love, and you can do the same. Like I'm not special in that way. Like we all can do that. So I just encourage everyone to do that. And just start with one thing. So maybe it's, just starting a blog or starting a podcast, or deciding to write a book, and then it'll kind of snowball and grow from there.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
I can't wait to get my hands on your book. I can't wait to read
Oh, great. I'm excited.
You enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Have a good one.